Translation: the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "O Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and other demigods, please hear me with great attention, for what I say will bring good fortune for all of you." Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, with purport. As long as you are not flourishing, you should make a truce with the demons and asuras who are now being favored by time. Purport. One word in this verse has two meanings: kalena and kavyena. Kalena means favored by time, and kavyena means favored by Sukracharya. Sukracharya being the spiritual master of the Daityas. The demons and the Daityas were favored in both ways. And therefore, the demigods were advised by the Supreme Lord to execute a truce for the time being, until time favored them. Om Jnanatim Randasya Jananjana Salakaya Chakshon Milatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kopachubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanabeyo Vaishnavabeyo Namo Namaha. So just also a prayer to the Bhagavatam begging for its mercy. Samsara Sagare Magnam Dinam Mam Kuruniti Karma Grahaya Kritangam Mamudava Bhavamava. I have fallen into the ocean of repeated birth and death, and I am totally distressed. My karma is like crocodiles ready to bite me. O ocean of mercy, please pick me up from the ocean of material existence. Srimad Bhagavatakya yoyam pratyaksha Krishna ivahi savrikritosya maya nata murtayam bhavasakare. This Srimad Bhagavatam is actually Krishna himself. O my Lord, to get release from this cycle of birth and death, I have taken shelter at your lotus feet. Manurate madayayo yam sabhala savatavaya nirvaganavya kartavyam dashaham tava Keshava. My dear Keshava, I am your servant. Please fulfill this desire of mine in serving you through the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Srimad Bhagavatam actually is a complete request for mercy. The complete request which the Lord has given to us in the forms of the pastimes about himself and his devotees. And it's very interesting to see in these previous verses. I'll just read the translation of first the verse that was yesterday, because the Lord is now responding to this request. This is text 15. Translation. I, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and all the demigods, accompanied by the Prajapatis like Daksha, are nothing but sparks illuminated by you, who are the original fire. Since we are particles of you, what can we understand about our welfare? O Supreme Lord, please give us the means of deliverance that is suitable from the for the brahmanas and the demigods. So it's a request. They need to be delivered from the asuras, the demons, who've been now somehow empowered by a curse on Indra. He diminished the power of the demigods. The asuras and the demons have now the power within the universe. And they're now begging. They've asked Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to offer prayers and a request that somehow, please, dear Lord, help us. And it says, what is the very nice part here, it says, what can we understand about our welfare? Because the nature of this world is that somehow the spirit souls, under the illusion of Maya, think that we can provide our own welfare. That somehow God has nothing to do with what we do in this world. That somehow, that if we have the ability, that we somehow have this knowledge, that we are the welfare, and that we are the controllers of our own destiny. But here, this is the prayers of devotees. This is the prayers of the demigods. They understand their position in relationship to the Lord. They understand what is their real position, which is helplessness, actually. That's our real position, helplessness in this material existence. So this is the understanding that will help us in our own devotional life. We can follow these prayers, that we can follow the mood of the prayers. We go to the spiritual master, like these demigods have gone to Lord Brahma, Shiva, to be representative, to make representations to the Lord. Likewise, we too ourselves, we have to make representations to our spiritual master, the acharyas, in everything that we do, where we can derive some of the spiritual benefit by this chain of disciplic succession, which goes all the way back to Krishna. We are sort of in a fortunate position, because actually, I lament sometimes about my own time when meeting devotees in 1971 when I was on honeymoon in London. And I wasn't interested. I had other things on my mind. But I thought they were nice. And I'd heard this record, the Hare Krishna record. So, I didn't know the power of this Maha Mantra at that time. So, I sometimes lament about that. But actually, in the mentality that there seems to be from these verses a right time. This is the indication. There's a right time when the Lord will favor us in our lives, if we can take advantage of this time. So this is the expression. The Lord, he says, be patient. You'll be favored by time. So I'll just read then the chapter 16 translation again. So this follows this request for deliverance. Sukadev Goswami continued, when the Lord was thus offered prayers by the demigods headed by Lord Brahma, he understood the purpose that which they had approached him. Therefore, in a deep voice that resembled the rumbling of clouds, the Lord replied to the demigods, who all stood there attentively with folded hands. There's a nice message here, actually, that Lord Brahma, he's taking their request to the Lord. As our spiritual master also receives our requests and inquiries. And somehow the spiritual master, the representative of the Lord in this world, Sakshat Hari, he somehow gets a message for us. This is known to be the Guru Tattva. In other words, the super soul is within the heart of everyone, but there are some who can hear the super soul. There are those that they've been empowered by their service in such a way, and there's that nice verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, I think it's 30, Canto 4, chapter 30, text 20, I think it is, where it says, by devotional service, we become enlivened, and everything seems ever fresh and new. And why? Because the super soul is directly communicating with our soul and gives us understanding, gives us intelligence, gives us joy from within. So it's service, this pure service, a motivated service that will make this connection. But here we have Lord Brahma as that connection. And the Lord replies to their earnest and sincere prayers with a voice like rumbling clouds. The Lord replied to the demigods, who all stood there attentively. Now this is the most important thing, because hearing is the most important thing, which we start with. Certainly, I didn't know anything about Krishna consciousness until I heard about it from these persons, or in this record, which I remarked about from my early days in 1970s, but also from the person who made the connection for me as Srila Prabhupada disciple, who was just giving a little talk on Bhakti Yoga. And he spoke in such a way that he was convinced. He had this conviction within him that this is real. And it convinced me. It had that sound vibration of which really penetrated, and I wanted to know more. So this whole Krishna consciousness thing is that this is purity. When we become convinced of this philosophy, this message of Prabhupada, then we too can pass on this message in such a way that we can convince others. So the message here is this faith must be kindled in some way by a sort of a flame that's been passed down, from the original flame. We have to be lit, and we have to light somebody else in some way. We pass this message on in that way, with what we understand, what has convinced us in our heart, what has touched our heart, and that we can pass on to somebody else. And this will be good for them as well as good for us. Because when we speak about Krishna, we start to feel joyful, we start to feel happy. And I know the one thing about book distribution for me, being a very fallen person, I didn't like to approach women because I'm so attractive. So what I used to do, I used to say, look, somehow, Krishna, I've got to distribute these books. And so what I do, I say, excuse me, I'm distributing books on yoga meditation. Very simple statement. And then if they inquired, then I would start to explain the book. And this explaining the book completely took me away from the bodily platform. Every time. Somehow I forgot myself, who I was, and that somehow the message became more important than my body. And this is the transcendental nature of this sound vibration, this message. We can convey it, because if we just take, maybe it's a little risk, but for service, there's so many risks actually. And we shouldn't be always thinking of my liberation, because this is like fruitive nature. Somehow or other, sure, we follow etiquette in all we do. We should do this because Prabhupada has asked us to do this. But in service, there's another dimension. Etiquette is there. We observe it. but somehow also within that etiquette we can serve and not be fearful, because service is transcendental to our fears. It takes us above our fears. It says in the chapter 2 in the Bhagavad Gita, keep all abominable activities away by devotional service. And it's a fact, and it's real. We can't survive without devotional service. Actually, it's the connection that will keep us in connection with this, with Krishna, with the devotees, and also our real self, finding out who we are, what we can actually do. And the other thing that occurs to me, that the reading of Prabhupada's books, going into the mood of them, his sacrifice, complete sacrifice. We heard this yesterday, from the mothers who spoke. Total sacrifice. And the devotees, they did so much in those days, but they didn't think about themselves. They thought about the person they loved, who was Prabhupada. Shamsundar, I remember him saying that he didn't know much about the philosophy, but he knew his love of Prabhupada made him do whatever he did. It was this connection. So what's important, that somehow we build a relationship up within our practices with each other in some way, and with those that we take on as our advisors, our Shiksha Gurus, our Guru, Diksha Guru, that somehow that some relationship can form, that we hear from them, we can read their books or whatever we've got, whatever connection, but somehow we can make this connection as one of love or affection, an attachment. We start to get attached in some way. Then we can follow instruction. So much easier. But to serve somebody you don't know is very difficult. So this is why the whole thing of patience is very important. Being patient in our spiritual life. So Lord is saying, you're not favored at this time. It favors the Daityas, the demons. So please, just follow what I say. Make a truce with the demons. How many times in our relationships, do we have a struggle within temple life, and sometimes we just don't get on. But what the Lord's showing us here, He said, make a truce. The truce has to be within ourselves. This mind, this so-called intelligence that is seeing fault rather than what is an attribute, what is a good thing in a person. Shri Shri Radha Gokul Nanda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki Jai. Now certainly this truce within, we have to, it's like to use the etiquette then. So we respect. We may not get along, but respect must be there. And then gradually this respect will give us the understanding of who the other person is, gradually. Because we should look at each other in such a way where we can see the good in each other. But we have to see it in such a way that follows a safe path. In other words, that we don't, and it says in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, if you will cross over all obstacles of material existence by hearing me or by being conscious of me. If, however, you are not conscious of me and you act under false ego, you hit them on the nose, somebody you don't like or something like that, then you'll be lost. So the whole thing about the situation within our lives is that somehow Krishna, as the Lord is saying here, you're going to have a truce first until time favors you. So in this next verse, it says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, although the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of the demigods, was capable of performing the activities of the demigods by himself, he wanted to enjoy pastimes in churning the ocean. Therefore, he spoke as follows. This is really interesting. We should understand that somehow Krishna's not only sort of trying to help us, he's got his pastimes. He somehow enjoys the interactions and the worship of the devotees and their service. Somehow or other, these are like pastimes of this world, this time and now. Whatever we're doing, actually. And somehow, he's saying, though I could make everything okay, I could just take up your duties, because they've been virtually disempowered, the demigods. And Krishna could take care of everything, but he's not like that. For pastimes, he somehow puts us into difficulties and conflicts. And somehow he's looking and he's watching. He's seeing everything, Super Soul. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva and other demigods, please hear me with great attention, for what I say will bring good fortune for all of you. So, he's saying, this message, just keep hearing about me, keep chanting. He says, with great attention, and that will bring all good fortune to you. It's a clear message. Krishna, he speaks in so many ways, actually. So we're not just looking at some story, but it's got a message, continuous message. And then we come to today's verse. As long as you are not flourishing, you should make a truce with the demons and the asuras who are now being favored by time. There's a very nice purport from Queen Kunti's prayers. Being favored by time. And it explains about who time is. We know, we hear this, time I am, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. But there's another explanation of time in these prayers too. And this is, these eyes, they're so limited. I'm losing my eyesight here. So this is Canto 1, Chapter 8, Text 28. I'd like to chant the verse, but it may hinder. So if you bear with me, because this is bold print, and I can read it better. My Lord, I consider your Lordship to be eternal time, the supreme controller without beginning and end, the all-pervasive one. In distributing your mercy, you are equal to everyone. The dissensions between the living beings are due to social intercourse. So first there's some, she's relating to the Lord to be eternal time. And then the supreme controller without beginning and end and all pervasive. She's connecting this time with the Supreme Controller, and that He's all pervasive. In distributing your mercy, you are equal to everyone. The dissensions between living beings are due to social intercourse. Now, dissensions, different opinions. I'm right, you're wrong. I like this, don't like that. These are dissensions. These are conflicts that we have with mundane intelligence. Dissensions come from the Lord. They're created in the form of Maya. Dissension means difference, duality. Not being able to see Krishna behind every dissension. And yet Queen Kunti can do this. Then it says, Kunti Devi knew that Krishna was neither her nephew nor an ordinary family member of the parental house. She knew perfectly well that Krishna is the primeval Lord who lives in everyone's heart as the Supersoul, Paramatma. Another name for Paramatma, feature of the Lord, is Kala, eternal time. So she's making a connection here with the Supersoul in eternal time. Eternal time is the witness of our actions, good and bad, and thus resultant actions are destined by Him. They're all one. This time, Supersoul, they're all one. It's destined. So this, what is happening with the demigods, is destined. Krishna's behind it. Supersoul's there. We may forget, for which we may suffer at the present moment, but we must remember that Paramatma is our constant companion, and therefore He knows everything, past, present and future. And because Paramatma feature of Lord Krishna destines all actions and reaction, He is the Supreme Controller also. Please understand, whatever dissensions we may have between us is not that person that you don't get on with or has caused our so-called difficulties. It quite clearly says here, as Supersoul, He's the source of our dissensions. And it says they are due to social intercourse. Our interactions within this world, if it's based on social intercourse, likes and dislikes, then we're bound to come under the dualities. So we are destined to get the reactions of our dissensions. It's very deep in a way, but we should understand that actually that whatever happens to us is Krishna, just in a different form. We can't say, I like this Krishna, but I don't like this Krishna. It's offensive. It's coming to us. We may not, on the material platform, it may cause us difficulties, that's for certain. But once you have this knowledge, you'll start to understand its special mercy. As Queen Kunti, you are equal in distributing your mercy. So these demons and these demigods, they're all under the mercy of Krishna. It's all happening under the mercy of Krishna. Somehow, they're all being benefited. So, just another thing, where Prabhupada has like a comment here, March 15th. Today, March 15th, now it is 7:35. As soon as it is 7:36, You cannot bring back that 15th of March, 7:35 again. Even if you pay millions of dollars, please come back again. No, finished. Chanaka Pandit says, time is so valuable that if you pay millions of golden coins, you cannot get back even a moment. What is lost for good. If you such valuable time spoil for nothing without any profit, just imagine how much you are losing, how greatly you are loser. Now, time is really precious. And within the 12 steps used by Alcoholics Anonymous, there's certain things that we can use time for. We're on this path. If we have any understanding in greater power. And it's very nice, actually. I'll just read you. Alcoholics have a spiritual path which they follow to come away from their addiction. But they have to realize that they're helpless. Just like the alcoholics, we have to realize that we're helpless. These 12 steps, they're like spiritual steps. And the first step, it says, we have admitted we're powerless over alcohol. We could say Maya. Because Krishna's in control of Maya. It's just another form of his divine energy. That our lives have become unmanageable. There should be some little confession within our heart that our lives are sometimes difficult. So we have to say, I'm helpless. Don't let me control things. There's a situation. So then it says in number 2, I came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Very nice statement, isn't it? We have to be restored. Prabhupada talks that we're insane. And I remember one of his lectures in the early days, in 1966, he was explaining how we're all in a lunatic asylum, he says. And he just chuckled. And so did the other people, they laughed. We're all insane, he says. So this is why this material world, it's a lunatic asylum. So, in some way. Then it says, after that, so we came to accept a greater power to restore us to sanity. Then we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. This is a point of surrender. It's understanding your situation, that there's only one person who can look after us, really, actually. It's Krishna. And then it said, we made a searching and fearless inventory, moral inventory of ourselves. In other words, Bhaktisiddhanta says it so many times. Look at your own faults. Don't look at the faults of others. See the good in others. So we look at ourselves fearlessly. Though sometimes we're afraid to look. Japa is such a wonderful time for looking at yourself, because you see all the things that pop out the mind. Incredible things. Things that you thought may have gone away, or things that you'd never seen before. That maybe it's another bit of dust in the corner that needs looking at. Something to sort out. But by Krishna's grace. And then it says, then we admitted to God, Krishna, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongdoings. This is revealing our heart to others. It's just following the principles laid down by Rupa Goswami. We reveal our heart. We say who we are. We're struggling. This is the strength of devotees. And then we say, we are entirely ready to have God remove all the defects of our character. So we now we're ready, that we want to make this step. And then it says, humbly asked him to remove all our shortcomings. So we pray to Krishna, please help me. Like the demigods, they're humbly calling upon Krishna to help them. So it's a humble position. Then we made a list of all the persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. The most difficult. Isn't it? The most difficult. For all our offences. Because it's the only obstruction to our spiritual life, really, in true terms, is these things that somehow let's resolve these differences. Time is precious. You cannot buy this time. It's used for a purpose. It's used to resolve our inner conflicts. If we are prepared to follow the spiritual guide, the spiritual instructions. Life is too short to have these things that will show up at the time of death, that we can resolve while we still have life, while we still have, but it means being humble. And that's really difficult. I'm speaking from my own point of view. This is where I struggle. So, and then it says, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Now, how do we know this? Sometimes we can go back to a person, as I once did. I caused offence here. There was some lamentation over a devotee had just left. And what happened, a whole crowd of the Gurukulis, they all came in. There was supposed to be a class that night. Somebody was supposed to be speaking. And there was no announcement, but they just took over the temple room. And foolish me. So there was one devotee out there who I thought was involved with them and would be able to help me. I said, look, I said to him, try and tell us beforehand and I can make arrangements or speak to the person concerned so they don't sort of get pushed out, or we could have contacted them. And they immediately blew their top with me. They said, go away. Go away. And of course, at that point, you really know you've made a mistake. You know, I felt that big. And I tried to say sorry, but it wasn't the moment. You can't resolve things like that. This person was actually grieving. So sometimes, it's just ludicrous. You have to let time look after things. You really have to do this. You have to find a point of time when things can be resolved. You have to use your intelligence. I had no intelligence. Foolishness. And to that day, this person is very reluctant to speak in any shape or form. But I'm hoping, by the grace of Krishna, and I pray for this, that this moment will be resolved, will come about, that I can resolve this foolishness on my part. I pray for that. So we have to be careful that our little confessions or our trying to correct things doesn't hurt others, doesn't cause harm to others. We have to be intelligent, really know what's happening. And then it continued. We continued to make a personal inventory, and we were wrong. We promptly admitted it. You know, when we do something wrong, you know, if we can admit it, it's okay. But there's sometimes where you've got to stand back. But That's the first, and we just continue this process in our whole devotional life. Because there will always be obstacles. It doesn't mean that we get to the point of purity and there'll never be obstacles. Look at Prabhupada. How many obstacles did he have? Look at the Pandavas. How many obstacles did they have? And they suffered. In some way, they always tried to resolve them. But Krishna was behind everything. We should understand. So this is stretching our internal faculty. So, Krishna here is saying, look, you have to make a truce. So first the truce is within oneself. You have to see what is happening. And make a truce with these asuras, these persons that you don't get on with. But wait for time to favour you. What's going to happen next? I don't know, because I don't know this pastime too well. But it's very interesting. Everything is going to develop into something special. So I better finish there. It's because it's gone 8:30. So forgive me for going over the time. So, any comments, questions?